there, it's none of my business, I know, but I couldn't help but notice, looks like psychosis. Life on relationship low, what's going on over there? It's none of my business, I know, but I couldn't help but notice, looks like psychosis. We live on relationship road.
Marissa in number 2 finishes the phone call with her mother in Portugal and goes to find Mary in the garden. Mary looks up smiling, but straight away she can see the look of worry on Marissa's face. And so she stops weeding and stands up. Mary puts her hand on Marissa's arm and quietly she says, "What's wrong, Marissa? Is it your parents? Has something happened back home?" Marissa, who is usually so upbeat and lively, looks as though she might cry. She takes a gulp before saying to Mary, "I'm so sorry, Mary, but I have to go home. My father is very ill and my mother isn't coping at all well. My father is in hospital and they're carrying out tests. My mother doesn't know what is going on. I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to take leave from work and just go. I will have to leave you as well." And at that she finally begins to cry softly. "It's fine, Marissa," says Mary, trying to be brave for the sake of her partner. "Work will understand and I'll be fine. After all, it won't be for long, will it?" "That's the point," sighs Marissa. "I don't know how long I'll be gone." And with that she begins to cry softly again. Mary feels for Marissa, who is now caught between doing the right thing by going back to support her parents and her other commitments, which are work and her. Mary doesn't want to add to her pressure, and so putting on a brave face, she manages to say, "I think that work will understand, and as for me, well, I'll be waiting until you come back. You know I will, don't you? We can speak on the phone and we'll just have to take each day as it comes." Mary then has a thought, but she doesn't voice it. She even feels bad thinking it, but she can't help herself. What if Marissa's father dies? Will Marissa feel that she has to stay in Portugal with her mother? Mary struggles to remain calm, but right now she knows that Marissa needs her. So she must put these thoughts away and give Marissa whatever support she needs. She can see that Marissa is taking the news about her father very badly. "Right," says Mary, taking charge for once. "Let's find you a flight back to Portugal, and then you can let your mum know when you will be back." She gets out the laptop and starts searching. At least flights are cheap enough at the moment, as the airlines are struggling to get people onto them. Mary finds a flight leaving in 2 days. She checks with Marissa that this is okay, and she goes ahead and books it for her. Later that evening they sit together and Mary decides that she has to voice her concern to Marissa. "Do you think you might have to stay permanently in Portugal with your mum if the worst happens to your dad? I mean, you can hardly leave her alone there, can you?" "That's not going to happen, Mary," says Marissa reassuringly. "Sure, I might have to stay for a little while, but my mother is strong and independent and she wouldn't expect me to stay with her. In fact, I don't think she would really want me to, not long term anyway. I've told you before that my parents are very worldly and liberal, and it would never enter their heads that I should become their carer. They have always maintained that in their opinion it's completely selfish to have children just so that you have someone to look after you when you get old. They have already made plans and looked at various retirement homes should the need arise. I don't have any worries that I'll end up trapped there, so neither should you." Mary and Marissa hug each other affectionately, and Mary vows to herself that she will follow through with her own plans to tell her boys about the nature of her relationship with Marissa, even though Marissa won't be around to support her if all goes wrong. However, Mary is determined to be strong and prepare for the ground for her and Marissa to embark on a new stage in their relationship by the time that Marissa gets back. "Maybe this will actually make our relationship stronger," she muses to herself. Brendan is walking with purpose now, and thoughts of Laura and the children are not in his head. Instead, he is looking for a small black dog called Caesar with a white tip on his tail. Brendan continues through the wood, and every now and then he calls out, but he doesn't come across any dogs. Finally, he finds himself back on the road, and so he walks the long way home down Green Lane, which joins the main road, from where he can loop back past the corner shop to his own flat towards the far end of Relationship Road. There has been a lot of talk lately on the radio about people stealing dogs to sell on to other people, and Brendan wonders if this is what has happened to Caesar. It seems that Connor left him just briefly outside the corner shop, but that's all it takes these days. Then, just as he turns the corner in Green Lane, he sees an elderly lady looking very distressed, and she's being almost pulled along by a small black dog with a white tip on its tail. It can't be, can it, thinks Brendan? She doesn't look like a dog snatcher. But then, what does a dog snatcher look like? "Excuse me," says Brendan politely, but then he doesn't know what to say next. I can hardly accuse this rather vulnerable-looking lady of stealing Connor's dog, though it seems unlikely that there are 2 dogs in this neighbourhood that match his description. Brendan is saved from his embarrassment by a car pulling up next to them. "Alice, there you are," exclaims Peter as he gets out of the car. "Where have you been? I've been worried sick about you." He pulls Alice towards him and hugs her, and she dissolves into tears again. Dan then gets out of the car and says to Brendan, "Is that your dog? He's a good-looking fella, and lively too by the looks of things." "No, he's not mine," replies Brendan, "but I was just about to ask this lady if she had seen another one just like it, as my friend has lost his dog, and this little fella fits the description he gave us. This isn't Alice's dog." Then turning to Peter, Dan asks, "This isn't your dog, is it? Only this young man is looking for a dog that looks just like this one." "Good Lord, no, we don't have any pets," says Peter, and turning to his wife he says, "Alice, where did you find this little dog? He's not ours, you know." Alice immediately becomes angry and holds onto the dog lead even more tightly. "It's Dinky, it's my dog, and a man stole him from me. I followed him to the corner shop and took Dinky back." Dan and Peter look confused and bewildered. Paula then gets out of the car, where she has been sitting quietly watching the exchanges and conversation. Straight away she could see what has happened. She touches Peter's arm gently and then says to Alice, "Hello Alice, my name is Paula. Do you remember me? I live across the road from you. Can you tell me about your little dog?" Alice eyes up Paula suspiciously, but then with animation she begins to tell her all about Dinky and what they do together. Peter, Dan and Brendan stand back and simply watch and listen. "Well, he's a fine little dog, isn't he?" says Paula, giving the dog a pat on the back and checking his name tag. "Alice, given that Dinky is so friendly, do you think that this young man could walk him back home while you go back in the car with Peter and Dan?" Alice is exhausted and upset, and so she agrees to get into the car with Peter. Paula explains to Dan that Alice will most likely forget about the dog once they are out of sight, and that he and Peter should distract her as much as possible and give her a hot cup of tea when they get home. Paula promises to drop by the house later to make sure that Alice is calm and settled. Dan drives Peter and Alice back home, where Olive is waiting for them all. Paula then turns to Brendan and asks, "What's the name of your friend's dog?" "It's Caesar," replies Brendan, who had watched how Paula dealt with Alice and was in awe of her. She seemed so calm and in control, but in a soft and gentle way, he thought to himself. Well, you could probably see that Alice was confused and scared. She lives just around the corner in the next road, and she's suffering from dementia. Sometimes people with this condition relate more to things in their childhood and past than in the present, and it seems that she had a dog just like Caesar here, and she must have thought that he was her own dog from when she was a little girl. I hope you will be able to explain this to your friend. She meant no harm. I live in Relationship Road, and so does Connor, the owner of the dog, and so I expect that she saw him walk past earlier today," offered Brendan by way of explanation. Then, sounding somewhat panicked, Paula blurts out, "Oh, then you mustn't go that way round. Not today. It's important that Alice doesn't see Dinky again. I mean Caesar, or she might get upset again." She hesitates briefly before adding, "Would you mind taking Caesar back towards the woods and down the road from that direction? If you can, that is. I hate to ask, but I know that it would be best for Alice." Brendan is touched by her concern for Alice and asks Paula, "Is she a relative of yours by any chance?" "No, not at all," laughs Paula. "In fact, I only found out today that she has dementia. I was out walking and Dan spotted me while he was out looking for her. I think she must have got confused and then got lost. I feel so sad for Peter, her husband. It's hard on him, as this has all happened quite fast. And as far as I can tell with this COVID-y thing, they aren't really getting as much support as they might normally get. I'm just a neighbour really. Well, I live over the road from them, and Alice was quite friendly with my mum when she was alive." Paula drew breath and realised that this was probably the longest speech that she had given for a long time. She'd got used to rather brief exchanges with Sean. Brendan is thinking to himself that this lady has such a lovely smile. Her whole face lights up. Then smiling himself, he says, "Well, the way you handled her and the whole situation was really something. Are you a nurse or a doctor?" "No," says Paula, feeling flattered, "but I used to work with dementia patients in the local nursing home. But I left when my mum became ill and I stayed at home to look after her." "Okay, that explains why you seem to know what to do then," says Brendan. And then, as an afterthought, he says, "Can I walk you back home, with Caesar here?" Paula feels herself blushing like a schoolgirl, and she immediately feels nervous. "Thank you, that would be really nice, but I have to get back quickly, and I have to call in and see Alice and Peter, so I'll go the other way, which is shorter if you don't mind." Then, after a slight pause, she adds, "But I walk this route most days, so perhaps I'll see you again. My name's Paula, by the way." "Sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Brendan," he replies. "I'll keep a lookout for you." And with a smile and a spring in his step that wasn't there earlier, he starts to walk back up towards the woods with little Caesar. Paula grins broadly as she turns the other way to walk past the corner shop and head back to see Alice and Peter. Then she remembers that Sean might be at home waiting for her, and she bows her head nervously and almost runs for home. If you have something you would like to share or a concern you would like addressed, please send it in and we will try and incorporate it into the future storylines. Tune in again for the next episode of Relationship Road.
Welcome to Relationship Road, where people live just like me and you, alone or together in all kinds of weather, and most of them are scared of this flu. What's going on over there? It's none of my business, I know, but I couldn't help but notice it looks like psychosis. The pressure's starting to show. What kind of neighbor am I? Am I doing my bit for the road? My parents are elderly, my children disorderly, the whole world is suddenly slow. What's going on over there? It's none of my business, I know, but I couldn't help but notice it looks like psychosis. The pressure's starting to show. And if you need me, let me know, and I will be the first to show.